And now to a very different kind of coming-of-age film. This one is set against the backdrop of Mexico's drug wars and tells the story of an orphan boy, Sujo. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year in the US and won the prestigious World Cinema Grand Jury Prize Dramatic. Directors Astrid Rondero and Fernanda Valadez have been creative partners for over 15 years. We asked them why Mexico's drug cartels and the violence surrounding them are recurring themes in their films.
We have been working together for over 15 years since we were students, and I think we came to adulthood, mid-20s or something, when the crisis of violence really got bad. So the Mexico we knew, it was completely changed. So it felt like talking about that violence, it was a way of understanding this change, and also for us as artists, what could we talk about and what could we do? So I think that's why we have committed ourselves to stories about violence for over 10 years, not because we want or we like violence, but because it's a reality in Mexico.
As you know, it's a very dangerous world that they're talking about, and you're setting your characters in. How did you do your research?
We always talk about that the biggest heroes in Mexico are journalists. So we work through their eyes. Especially there was a very important journalist, Javier Valdez, who was killed some years ago, that made a lot of chronics, of a lot of stories about the people of these areas, young kids, orphans, but also women and parents of the deceased, of the people that were part of the drug wars. So I guess that was really influential for us, and we really feel committed to talk about these stories and to trying to put the balance in place and say these people are caught amid this crisis and they're not deciding to be part of that. It's just like a very difficult situation that's happening in some areas in Mexico.
And how do you think being female directors gave a different perspective or affected how this story was told?
I think even from our last film that centers on the story of a mother looking for a missing son, unconsciously having a female perspective gave us a certain optics as to what was important or relevant. At that time, a male friend told us the interesting story is not that of the women, but of the boys. And we didn't feel that. And I think in this society in crisis, women are making the resistance, are those who are staying in their communities. Sometimes they leave, of course, but they're the ones who are making a stance against violence. So I think...
well, that's why Sujo.
That's why Sujo, it's also surrounded by women. And when we begin thinking about this film, and it was for Astrid and for myself kind of a big decision to have a male character, a male protagonist for the first time, we wanted to understand the vulnerability of young boys in violence, because they're very easily recruited. And the females surrounding him are the ones who spiritually nourished him and who give him a possibility of change.
And for you, I would say, I mean, some would say you've kind of made the gender divide quite simplistic, where men are portrayed as machismo and the women are nurturers. But why did you decide to make it quite clear with those roles?
Well, in Mexico, in some areas of Mexico, most men are gone because they are migrating. So that's one of the issues. So they migrate, and sometimes they're caught while they're migrating by cartels. In other instances, young boys grow up and then become prone to get into the drug cartels. And it's not a thing of just gender, it's just like they are more vulnerable. So women are naturally, they stay in their places, and sometimes they have to help them grow, to find the people that are missing. So the image of women in Mexico is a very important image of resistance. There's a lot of women trying to find the people that has disappeared on the route to the US. So it's a symbol. The other thing, and I have to say because we have lived that ourselves as filmmakers, is that if you're a woman in certain areas, it's more possible that nothing will happen to you, because the groups that are fighting for the territory, they won't feel stressed or attacked because another group is getting into. So that's why sometimes we are more capable of shooting in very dangerous areas. Fernanda and we always work with a lot of women in the crew. So it's very, very weird because we feel like we're protected because we're women working in those areas.
So for me, that was a very unexpected answer from you, given that one would think that especially being women in quite a patriarchal culture like in Latin America would not have the access that you were given, and perhaps not be accepted so much as being directors of movies that are dealing with such violence or a very dark side to the country.
Well, for Fernanda and me, we always think that it's an anomaly, as you're saying. It's just something that's not typical, that it's strange. So that's why we feel it's very important that what we tell, the stories we tell, are important, that are socially relevant. So I think that that's the same commitment that many other women feel towards what they do. So I think that, yeah, women right now in filmmaking and in other areas in Mexico are really trying to do their best.
I find with every film, there's a character that resonates with the viewer the most. For a director, is it the same way? Is there a character that you find yourself having the most attachment with?
That's interesting. It's a curious question, and I think when we were directing, even when we were writing, we felt attachments perhaps to different characters, and that was useful because then we could feel for them in different ways, and we could try to perhaps it sounds a little bit corny, but to feel compassion for all the characters, even the perpetrators. And I think that's part of what we wanted to tell in a country that has thrown itself to violence. It's not like we suddenly woke up and people became murderers. It's a really difficult border to define in which a person we can all become perpetrators if the social conditions allowed it. And we shouldn't allow those social conditions, but the people go from one gray area to another, and that's what we wanted to understand.
You mentioned earlier the message of hope, and we see that in Sujo's interactions with his teacher. Can you expand on that a little bit more and tell us why this film is more about hope than kind of looking at this bleak situation he has grown up in?
Well, we were thinking when we were writing the story that all difficult moments in history have this like orphan that show us how resilient is human spirit. I think about Great Expectations, Pete, this character. There are a lot of orphans in history that tell you like this, like humans can change the reality they're in. So Sujo means that also. So another thing that's very interesting is that Mexico is all this violence that we're talking about, but we're also a great country. And we have this institution that's the university that's free, which is something that we realized while we were showing the film, that not all countries have free universities. And in Mexico, we do have, and we have been fighting so the school keeps on being free for everybody. So I think it's a great symbol. And Sujo it's that expression of this character that is struggling, that has a very difficult upbringing, which I think every country can relate on that. And he's aspiring to have a different life. And it's a question of, you are your past, are you your past, or is it possible for you to find a different future? So that's why I think it's a hopeful story.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the actor who plays Sujo?
Well, for us, he's really inspiring because I think that Sujo, the character, Juan Jesus Varela, the actor, he is Sujo in many ways because he's a boy that probably if he was from another from a social background, we would have met him as an acting student or in an acting studio. but his reality, he was working in very different jobs. He was trying to find money because he's a father already. So it was incredible how committed he was to the character. As Fernanda says, he's a natural actor, and he's preparing himself to keep on being an actor. So his story is like a very, very like a mirror.
parallel.
Yeah.
You told me that the movie has not shown in Mexico yet. How concerned are you about how it will be received?
Well, very, of course. I think, and that's something that I think filmmakers that reside like us in a country that doesn't have a sustainable film industry, that's something that we encounter. We need, like we were really lucky to premiere in Sundance, which gave the film a platform to travel around the world, and that gave distributors in different countries, but in Mexico in particular, the confidence, okay, let's show this film to the Mexican audience. So we know the film has played well, that audiences has find the film moving, and they have felt empathy for the character. But of course, we want to open a discussion in Mexico. We were thinking about the Mexican young people in particular, so we'll see.
It hasn't been shown in Mexico yet, but what do you hope that the viewers in Mexico or the audience in Mexico will take away from this movie?
To acknowledge that a little goes a long way, that you can do a very small thing for somebody else and that will change his life or her life. That there's a lot of orphans in Mexico due to violence, which is it's a topic that we haven't discussed, and that we as a society need to do something for these kids, that we need to care about them. They're especially orphans are like the children of our age and our society, so we need to be there.
You know, the situation couldn't be far more different from Taiwan, one of the safest cities in the world. But what do you hope will resonate with audiences here?
I think something that we have noticed in the different countries in which Sujo has been screened is that independently of the context, we all feel pain growing up. We all struggle to find our way in the world. And in the end, deep down, that's what Sujo is about a young kid struggling to find himself and to have the assurance to say, no matter what, I have an opportunity to be the one I want to be and not the one I'm destined apparently to be.